Whilst Aegon II was crowned, on Dragonstone, no cheers were heard. Instead, screams echoed through the halls and stairwells of Sea Dragon Tower, down from the Queen's apartments, where Rhaenyra Targaryen strained and shuddered in her third day of labour. The child had not been due for another month, but the tidings from King's Landing had driven the princess into a black fury, and her rage seemed to bring on the birth, as if the baby inside her was angry too, and fighting to get out. The princess shrieked and cursed all through her labour, calling down the wrath of the gods upon her half-brothers and their mother, and detailing the torment she would inflict upon them before she would let them die. She cursed the child inside her too, Mushroom tells us, clawing at her swollen belly as Maester Geraldus and her midwife tried to restrain her. When the baby was at last born, she proved to be indeed a monster, a stillborn girl, twisted and malformed, a hole in her chest where her heart should have been, and a stubby, scaled tail. Or so Mushroom describes. The dwarf tells us it was he who carried the little thing to the yard for burning. The dead girl had been named Visenya, Princess Rhaenyra announced the next day. When milk with a poppy had blunted the edge of her pain. She was my only daughter, and they killed her. They stole my crown and murdered my daughter, and they shall answer for it. And so the dance began, as the princess called a council of her own. The Black Council, the true telling, names the gathering on Dragonstone. Rhaenyra herself presided, seated between her uncle and her husband, Prince Daemon, and her trusted counsellor, Maester Geraldus. Her 3 sons were present with them, though none had reached the age of manhood. Jacaerys was 14, Lucerys 13, and Joffrey 11. 2 Kingsguards stood with them, Sir Eric Cargill, twin to Sir Eric, and the Westerman, Sir Lorett Marbrand. 30 knights, 100 crossbowmen, and 300 men-at-arms made up the rest of the Dragonstone garrison. That had always been seen sufficient for a fortress of such strength. As an instrument of conquest, however, our army leaves something to be desired, Prince Daemon observed. A dozen lesser lords, bannermen and vassals to Dragonstone sat at the Black Council as well. Caldegar of Claw Isle, Stoughton of Rook's Rest, Massey of Stone Dance, Bar Emmon of Sharp Point, and Darklyn of Duskendale among them. But the greatest of the lords to pledge his strength to the princess was House Valeryon of Driftmark. Though the sea snake had grown old, he liked to say he was clinging to life, like a drowning sailor clinging to the wreckage of a sunken ship. May perhaps the 7 have preserved me for one last fight. With Lord House Valeryon came his wife, Princess Rhaenys, 55, her face lean and lined, her black hair streaked with white, yet fierce and fearless she had been at the age of 22, the queen who never was. Those who sat at the Black Council counted themselves loyalists, but knew full well that King Aegon would name them traitors. Each had already received summons from King's Landing, demanding they present themselves at the Red Keep to swear oaths of loyalty to the new king. All their hosts combined could not match the power of the High Towers alone. Aegon's Greens enjoyed other advantages as well. Old Town, King's Landing and Lannisport were the largest and richest cities in the realm. All 3 were held by the Greens. Every visible symbol of legitimacy belonged to Aegon. He sat the Iron Throne. He lived in the Red Keep. He wore the Conqueror's crown. He wielded the Conqueror's sword, and had been anointed by a septon of the faith before the eyes of tens of thousands. Grandmaster Orwell sat in his councils, and the Lord Commander of the King's Guard had placed a crown upon his princely head, and he was male, which in the eyes of many made him the rightful king, and his half-sister a usurper. Against all that, Rhaenyra's advantages were few. Some older lords might yet recall the oaths they had sworn when she was made Princess of Dragonstone, and named her father's heir. There had been a time when she had been well loved by the highborn and commons alike, when they had cheered for her as the realm's delight. Many a young lord and noble knight had sought for her favour then, but how many would still fight for her now that she was a woman wed, her body aged and thickened by 6 childbirths, was a question none could answer. Though her half-brother had looted their father's treasury, the princess had at her disposal the wealth of House Valeryon, and the sea snake's fleets also gave her a superiority at sea, and her consort, Prince Daemon, tried and tempered in the Stepstones, had more experience of warfare than all the foes combined. Far from at least Rhaenyra had her dragons. As does Aegon, Maester Geraldus pointed out. We have more, said Princess Rhaenys, the queen who never was, who had been a dragon rider longer than all of them, and ours are larger and stronger, but for Vhagar, dragons thrive best here on Dragonstone. King Aegon has his Sunfire, a splendid beast, though young. Aemon One-Eye rode Vhagar, and the peril posed by the Queen Visenya's mount could not be played down. Queen Helena's mount was Dreamfire, the dragon who had borne the old king's sister, Rhaenyra. Prince Daeron's dragon was Tessarion, with her wings dark as cobalt, and her claws and crest and belly scales as bright as beaten copper. That makes 4 dragons of fighting size, said Rhaenys. Queen Helena's twins had their own dragons too, but no more than hatchlings. The usurper's youngest son, Maelor, was possessed of only an egg. Against that, Prince Daemon had Caraxes, and Princess Rhaenyra, Syrax. Caraxes, both huge and formidable beasts. Caraxes especially was fearsome, and no strangers to blood and fire after the Stepstones. Rhaenyra's 3 sons, by Laenor Valyrian, were all dragon riders too. Vermax, Arax, and Tyrax were thriving and growing larger every day. Aegon the Younger, eldest of Rhaenyra's 2 sons by Prince Daemon, commanded the young dragon Stormcloud, though he had yet to mount him. Little brother Viserys went everywhere with his egg. Princess Rhaenys' dragon, Meleys, the Red Queen, had grown lazy, but remained fearsome when roused. Prince Daemon's twins by Laenor Valyrian might yet be dragon riders too. Baela's dragon, the slender pale green moon dancer, was soon to be large enough to bear the girl upon her back, and though her sister Rhaenyra's egg had hatched a broken thing that died within hours after hatching, Syrax had recently produced another clutch. One of her eggs had been given to Rhaenyra, and it was said the girl slept with it every night, prayed for a dragon to match her sister's. Moreover, 6 other dragons made their lairs at the smoky caverns of the Dragonmount above the castle. There was Silverwing, good Queen Alysanne's mount of old; Seasmoke, the pale beast that had been the pride and passion of Sir Laenor Valyrian; hoary old Vermithor, unridden since the death of King Jaehaerys, and beneath the mountain dwelled 3 wild dragons, never claimed nor ridden by any man, living or dead. The small folk had named them Sheepstealer, Grey Ghost, and Cannibal. Find riders to master Silverwing, Vermithor, and Seasmoke, and we will have 9 dragons against Aegon's 4. Mount and fly their wild kin as well, and we will have 12, even without Stormcloud, Rhaenys pointed out. That is how we shall win this war. Lord Celtigar and Sordon agreed. Aegon the Conqueror and his sisters had proved that the knights and armies could not stand against fire and blood. Celtigar urged the princess to fly against King's Landing at once, and reduce the city to ash and bone. And how will that serve us, my lord? The sea snake demanded of him. We want to rule the city, not burn it to the ground. I will never come to that, Celtigar insisted. Usurper will have no choice but to oppose us with his own dragons. Our 9 must surely overwhelm his 4. At what cost? Princess Rhaenyra wondered. My sons would be riding 3 of those dragons, I remind you, and it would not be 9 against 4. I will not be strong enough to fly for some time yet. And who is to ride Silverwing, Vermithor, and Seasmoke? You, my lord? I hardly think so. It will be 5 against 4, and one of those 4 will be Vhagar. There is no advantage. Surprisingly, Prince Daemon agreed with his wife. In the Stepstones, my enemies learned to run and hide when they saw Caraxes' wings, or heard his roar, but they had no dragons of their own. It is no easy thing for a man to be a dragon slayer, but dragons can kill dragons, and have. Any maester who's ever studied the history of Valyria can tell you that. I will not throw our dragons against the usurper unless I have no other choice. There are other ways to use them better. Then, the prince laid his own strategies before the Black Council. Rhaenyra must have a coronation of her own to answer Aegon. Afterwards, they would send out ravens calling for the lords of the 7 kingdoms to declare their allegiances to the true queen. We must fight this war with words before we go to battle, the prince declared. The lords of the great houses held the keys to victory, Daemon insisted. Their bannermen and vassals would follow wherever they led. Aegon the usurper had won the allegiances of the Lannisters of Castle Rock, the Tyrells of Highgarden, and Lord Tyrell of Highgarden was a mauling boy in swaddling clothes, whose mother was acting as regent, but would most likely align the reach with her over-mighty bannermen, the Hightowers. But the rest of the realm's great lords had yet to declare, and that was their path to victory.